All right, it is Thursday. I wanted to, I was gonna say I wanted to be started on this project on Monday. I kind of was in a roundabout way. It just wasn't the part of the project that I wanted to be started on Monday. And let's just say that the last 3 days previous to this, me and the 7300 were going a few rounds, and there were some not so good words exchanged. But let me get the oil draining in this thing, and I will explain. I probably should have just went ahead and videoed it, but it was one of them deals where I was not overly impressed with how she was acting, and I just wanted to get the situation taken care of. I will never understand how these things end up so damn tight. Why? Of course, my other fear is, since this hose is just hanging here loose, that the wrenches are going to slip and I'm going to bust my knuckles at Mach whatever into something hard and sharp, and it ain't going to feel good. Okay, the oil's draining. It takes it a minute to go through that hose, so anyhow, I wanted to start this project on Monday. I wanted to get it out of the barn. I wanted to get it out, get it power washed again, because when I washed it last January, it was raining on the day I washed it, and I basically just did enough to get all the big chunks off and called it good for the time being. It needed to be gone over again. So I wanted to get it out, go over it again. So Monday, come out here, get the 1950T pulled out because it was out of the area, it was in the way. Go to jump in this thing, turn the key on, hit the button, nothing. It wouldn't even click the starter. It's like, okay, so first things first, you go to the batteries. Got the batteries out so I could test them individually, threw a tester on them. Sure enough, had one battery, was showing like 3.5 volts. You load it up, it drops to nothing, so it had at least one collapsed cell in it. I wasn't gonna mess around trying to recharge or anything, because chances are it was junk anyhow. So ran to Rural King, got 2 brand new batteries put in it, put the batteries in it, turned the key on, hit the button, nothing. Wouldn't even click the starter, not a damn thing. So I was like, okay, now we're weird. So I thought that I recalled, and I couldn't remember if I had a couple times in this thing last year where I had to click the starter button a couple times, or if I had to cycle the key switch a couple times, or if I'm thinking about 2 years ago when the light switch was getting funky. But either way, I thought that I had remembered something giving me a couple issues, maybe or maybe not, in one of either the ignition switch or the start button. So that was the first place I started checking to see, okay, are one of these things shorted out, or we have a problem up there, or whatever. Couldn't really get a good indicator. I had 12 volts everywhere I was supposed to have 12 volts. The only thing that was goofy was it showed 12 volts across the starter button as soon as I turned the key on, but that could just be because it was jumping through the tester. But anyhow, so that was kind of a dead end on that at the time. So started checking battery connections, and I started at the solenoid and put a wrench on the solenoid and did that. Which this thing needed, since I've had it, this thing's had a big crack in it from here all the way down through into where that stud was molded in. So that's why it broke, because it was already cracked, and it was kind of scuzzy in there anyhow. So I was like, okay, maybe last fall somehow the solenoid got full of water. There's some bad connections inside the solenoid. Maybe that's the problem. So at that point, it was too late to do anything about it. So Tuesday after work, went down to the starter shop that we use in South Bend, picked up a new solenoid for it, put the solenoid on the starter, put the starter back on, hooked everything back up, turned the key on, hit the button, nothing. Wasn't even clicking the starter. Like, okay. So I pulled the ground cable off, pulled all the cables off, cleaned all the connections, put everything back together. Pulled everything off, cleaned all the connections, checked the batteries one more time to make sure that something wasn't screwed in the electrical system, and I ruined a battery right off the bat when I turned the ignition on. Slight chance, but there is a chance. Both batteries checked out just fine. So clean up all the connections, put all the cables back on, turn the key, hit the starter button, nothing. Still got 12, you go in the dash, still had 12 volts everywhere I was supposed to have 12 volts when I was supposed to have it there. So I was getting juice to the dash, I just wasn't getting juice out of the dash back to the starter. So I traced wires and stuff, made sure I had good continuity between the starter button and the solenoid. Everything checked out good there. So I was like, what the heck? So I went and got the jumper cables out of my pickup and started jumping posts on the battery to see if I had a bad cable. And after all that messing around, granted the batteries one of the batteries was junk right off the bat, so there was that. But after all that messing around, this guy was the problem. I took this clamp on end off and cleaned the wires up, cleaned all that up, put it back together. Didn't make a difference. So I'm guessing there's corrosion in, which it looks like there is corrosion in this crimp on this end, and apparently it had enough continuity to show 12 volts when you needed it there, but the minute you hit the button, it didn't have enough to carry the current, and it would drop to nothing. So we had some cable. I went and bought a couple ends Tuesday night before O'Reilly closed and made a new cable, because this is the one that jumps the two batteries together to make your 12 volts. This is two 6s wired in series to make 12. So this is that jumper that goes between the two. Put that on, and she fired right up, and it hasn't cranked over that quick since I bought it. So apparently this has been failing for a while, and whatever happened in between January and now finally did it in, because like I say, it's never cranked that fast. It wings right over now. So I don't know if it's a combination of the contacts in the solenoid were getting pretty nasty, so it wasn't flowing current very well, or if it was all on this or whatever. But anyhow, so Tuesday night got it started, got it running, everything else worked, charged fine, everything electrical on it worked fine. Yesterday went to get it out, got it parked in the yard because I wanted to power wash it off again, and got the power washer started, and the power washer broke, and I had to fix that. And then yesterday night I finally got it power washed. So it's been a chore right up until this point, but everything from here on out should be fairly run-of-the-mill. I got oil to change, fuel filters to change. I have to put the knives, or rock the knives back into the chopper. I did get Monday night, I did pull this top section of auger out so I could measure out the flighting. Called around to a couple different places, and Smith Machine over in Ohio ended up being $2 cheaper than anybody else on, because they sell flighting by the foot. You buy it in 5 or 10 foot sections, but they still sell it by the foot. And they were $2 a foot cheaper than anybody else. So I got 2 5-foot sections that'll do both sides of the auger. The grain pan and that, and the grain pan in this are both from Schmidt. That's how we found them. Was when we first bought this, the grain pan was rotted out in the front, which is a common spot for them to all rot out. That one's the same way. So this has got a new Schmidt grain pan in it. That's got a new Schmidt grain pan in it, and I need to buy one at some point for the 8700. That one doesn't look like it was a rot out. Something looks like it I don't know if it ate a rock at some point. And it did some serious. Something physically looks like it went down and punched about a fist-sized hole in it. And they patched it, and they did a decent job of patching it, so I haven't been worried about it. But at some point, I am gonna have to put a new grain pan in it. And they still show one as a good part number, so at some point that needs to be done. But anyhow, so ordered that yesterday. That should be, I might see that Friday, because it was shipping today. It was just coming from Ohio. And I have, these guys are going on. When I ordered these, I thought, because this uses they're par 46. They're 5.5 inch lights instead of 4.5 inch like the par 36s are. And when I ordered these, I thought they were bulbs. They're sealed beam, because these are sealed beam. I thought they were sealed beam inserts, and they're not. They're an entire light assembly, because I was hoping to be able to put LEDs in the original housings, and it doesn't look like I'm going to have that kind of luck. So I'm going to have to modify the mounting brackets a little bit, but I gotta do something on this, because they were plenty bright with the corn head, but with that. That's a goofy connection. We're gonna cut that big honking thing off and just make it a 2-wire one going to. I'm probably gonna have 1 wire loop around and ground on the stud, and then obviously your power wire. But I got to do something, because like I say, with the corn head, those lights were plenty bright, didn't have a problem. With the grain table, they're fine. Well, I can't even say that. They're not, although now that I got good battery cables, they are actually brighter. They're not bad when you're down and you're cutting, but when you pick the head up, those things don't have enough lumens, and the reel blocks enough that if the head's up, especially going down the road, you can't see shit in front of you. So I'm hoping those cure the problem. So, but like I say, I was really hoping that they were just inserts that would go into those bulbs, or go into those housings. That way they looked original. No such luck, so we're just gonna have to replace them, but I'll obviously keep those lights so that if I ever wanted to, I can put them back on. So anyhow, let me real quick do my oil change, my filter change, or my fuel filter change, because that's just run-of-the-mill stuff. And then hopefully yet today I have enough daylight that I want to get this section of auger out so that they can go over to Dad's, and we can work on getting the flighting cut off and get them prepped for the new flighting. And I think that's it. I got lights, I got the augers, I didn't have to do anything as far as changing sprockets or anything to run corn, because this thing likes to run beans with the corn sprocket on, so that's where that is. So really don't have a whole lot left to do on this after my little electrical escapade. Alright, I've been through the engine, oil filter, fuel filters, oil, air cleaner, coolant, checked topped off the hydraulic oil. That's all squared away, so now we can get this auger out Guess I should have swung that forward while I was washing. It was back here. Put this out of the way for a minute. So the only thing that holds this auger in is this pulley and gravity. So the only thing we got to do is loosen this belt, take this pulley off, and then the auger will, as long as it's not stuck, which it shouldn't be, and if it is, it shouldn't be too stuck because we've changed the bearing in this before. It should, once the pulley's off, just slide out the top. So to loosen the belt, hopefully, I guess you can't see. Well, take my word for it, there's a pulley right here. We loosen this bolt. And then back off the adjuster. Might need to tap on that with a hammer. Yeah, we're plenty loose there, so we need a hammer. Why that's being so difficult, but anyhow, so there's that, and then we got this little set screw here. Should have brought my cardboard out. Hopefully I can do this without a puller, otherwise I'm going to have to go to Dad's because I don't have any here. Smaller than that. I know it's going to make me. It's going to make me grab a puller. I can guarantee it. That's the power of anti-seize. Look at that there. Even the Woodruff key came out. And I'm wondering if this bearing is... These lower bearings are kind of a high wear item. And it's not because they're high stress. It's not because they're high speed. It's because when you get moisture sitting down here at the bottom of the auger, which is not that hard to do, it just takes like a heavy dew or something. It sits there and it eats away at the top of that bearing, and then the bearing's shot. So it does not take a whole lot to have that bearing. I shouldn't say that. It's not that it doesn't take a whole lot, and sure enough, that's got some crusties in it. So we'll have to pull that bearing cover off and investigate if it just needs cleaned up and greased up and have the seal pop back in. Because the seal still looks decent. So if we can get away with cleaning it up and repacking it, it's like I say, it's not a high stress bearing. So now that should lift right out. It's a matter of getting a good angle on it. bearing. Shouldn't be anything in the tube for it to catch on, because that's kind of counterproductive. All right. Well, I guess I'll yeah, we got 3 bolts and this bearing retainer casting comes off. So it's got to come off anyhow. Well, I guess I'm done for the night. That bearing's stuck on there, which, like I say, doesn't surprise me, because that's why that bearing goes out, is it water and everything, all the fermented whatever grain you got sitting in there, it plays hell with that bearing. So I'm gonna need a puller to get that off. I thought I almost considered taking these bolts out and seeing if I can get the stub shaft out, but we've never had that out, and I guarantee you it is just as much, if not more, stuck than that bearing is. So I guess tomorrow on my way home from work, I'll swing by Mom and Dad's and grab a 3-jaw puller, and we can get that off of there. And I guess see what happens, because I'd go right now, but I've only got about 30 minutes of daylight left, and after that it's kind of hard to do anything out here. So I'll clean my mess up. I got some stuff that needs taken care of, and I should go. There's a door in the house that needs work done. I should go do that. But anyway, we will see you guys tomorrow to finish that bearing, and if we got flighting, we'll go over and start working on the flighting. Otherwise, I'll start working on the lights. But anyway, we'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, we're back. Need to go today after work and run to the bank and check. And today was my first payday, so I wanted to check and make sure all my direct deposit worked like it was supposed to. So that worked out. Stop and pick up the puller. Okay, is the whole bearing coming with me, or I think I'm just pulling the bearing right there. Yep. Nope, whole bearing came. Sweet. Ooh boy. Ooh boy. I think we're definitely into replacing that bearing. I might have one. I remember we tried to keep some around, but this is basically what you got. Is you got a felt, which this, you don't have to replace this every time you clean it up, and that's reusable. And then there's a washer, and then the bearing. Oh yeah, that upper seal is, that was the problem. The upper seal was shot. But you got that felt and the flat washer that acts as a spacer, and then the felt, and that felt is supposed to keep crap out of the bearing. it's kind of on whether or not it actually did a decent job, but I might have a bearing. Knowing that that's kind of a problem child, we tried to keep one around, or keep one around for a spare. But I'm trying to remember. I know I've replaced the 525 had one. I think the 525's had 2 put in it, and I'm trying to remember if this one's had 2 put in it or if it's still on its first one. But you definitely want to, although it looks like on this one you could still get away with it. On the 525, it was a real pain if that bearing went out, because the flighting comes all the way to the end of that tube, and when the bearing fell apart and the auger set down, the flighting would come around and catch the heads on these carriage bolts, and the auger wouldn't turn. So last time well, I shouldn't say it, it's only actually gone out on me in season once, and when it did it and it sat down, we had to rig up, if I remember right, we had a 2x4 down here to use as a fulcrum, and then we took a 2x4, stood on end, and got underneath the shaft, and Dad held down on it while I feathered the auger to get the bin unloaded. But he basically pushed down and got the auger pushed up off the floor. So yeah, if you can, keep an eye on this bearing, and if it looks like it's gonna go, replace it. If it feels like it's gonna go, replace it, because if it does go, and like on this one, it wouldn't take much for it to just wear a bigger hole in this floor plate of that auger trough and drill itself through, and then you're back to catching on these bolt heads. So there you go on all the Oliver combines with this style of grain tank. So 525, 35, 45, 7300. Keep an eye on that bearing. Otherwise, you'll have a bad day. Of course, there's not too many people out here that are actively using these things as a main machine like I am. So you probably don't run into that problem very often. But now, it's just a matter of okay, so there's 2 auger halves, lower and upper. The lower is getting pretty razor thin there at there's not a whole lot of cross section there where the uptake is, and you can see, looking right there out to here, see how much meat's been taken off of it. It's getting pretty thin all the way up, so it's about time. And it's kind of getting a little chattered there here in the center too, where it trades. I still don't know what's going on here, but where it trades off between the 2 auger halves, it's getting kind of thick too. So it honestly doesn't look like it's got a weld there and there. I wonder if this thing's only welded at the top and the bottom. I don't see any other welds on it. Normally they're stitched all the way up, but if it don't, oh, there's one in there. There's right there in the center. Okay, so it should be fairly easy to get cut off of there. So that could be a project for tomorrow. Hopefully, as long as I got a bearing, which even if I don't got a bearing, you can still get the auger and everything set back in it, and that's all it needs. But hopefully tomorrow I want to get this done, because all my parts showed up for the 8700 today. If my flighting for this showed up today, and all the parts for the 8700 showed up today, so I'd like to get this done tomorrow and get the 8700 done Sunday. I got Monday off, so I could work on or go over the corn head Monday, possibly the bean head, depending. on what needs to be done. I know the corn, well, never mind. Too far down the line. So while I'm here, we're gonna tinker with these lights some. Determine what I need to do to get them mounted up and not have the mounting look gaudy. I remember I got these from Larson, which I think that's pretty much all the LEDs I have come from Larson. So basically the thing we run into is those lights have to be able to pitch in and out. The side to side is not a big deal because that's, of course, I guess I can do the pitch with the bracket too, because that bracket's only got one bolt in it. But the original lights here have like a ball mount. Whoops. Yeah. So you got this plastic spacer, there's a ball socket on the back of the light, and then so that gives you all your swivel right there. And on here they did it with this this big, they could have made this narrower, but this great big gaudy thing. And it's, that piece is plastic. Is that whole thing plastic, or is that, nah. That's aluminum. This feels like plastic. But I wouldn't, I mean, it's fairly compact. It just doesn't need to be this freaking wide. So if how wide is that compared to that ball socket? I just don't want it to look. So that's not, that landing pad there, jaw pad, whatever you want to call it, isn't really any wider than that. So that's okay. So all I would probably need to do to make this work out right, or to make this work and not look terrible, is if I take this and just narrow it up to the width of this, and that probably won't be atrocious, and then get this plug apart. Actually, just cut the plug off, cut some of this jacket back, put a lug or a ring terminal on the ground wire and bring it around. Yeah, should be able to do that because it'll ground through the light bracket, because this will be like that, and then this will be on the other, so that should work there. And then I just need, I've already got spade terminals on the lights from when I rewired it, so I just need to know which style of spade I need to have on the positive. And we should be good. And I don't think it would look too terrible if I did it that way. So I think we've got our plan. Alright, I'm scared if I use a grinder, I'm going to schmelt it. And I'm scared if I use a Sawzall, I'm going to chip it. So I've got a metal blade for this oscillating tool. We're going to try this, I guess. that kind of schmelts it too. It actually does leave a nice cut though. It doesn't leave any saw marks. Oh damn. Okay, quit walking around on me. Oh, I see the problem. That ought to clamp a little better. Oh yeah. Alright, so I went out and held one up on the combine, and the best thing to do, there's just inside the cab where the connection is for the hot wire, there's like a 3/8 bolt, carriage bolt that holds the cab together. That would be a good spot for the ground, and that keeps the wire jacketed all the way inside the cab and keeps things nice and tidy. So that's the route we're going to go. I just have to strip. And let's just go back yay far to get me a little more room to work. You want to not hurt the jacket on the wire if you can avoid it. Tell you what, they use some good, that's some good jacketing. All right. Got some heat shrink on here. There's that. I don't know how well this is going to work. Unfortunately, the only terminals I've got that are for 3/8 are these things. I can't open those up far enough, I don't think. Even if I'd probably end up bending them before I ever got a bigger hole through them anyhow. So we'll see what I can do here. Well, that should work. But before I do that, put the heat shrink on. That would have made me mad. damn it. Normally in a situation like this, I would double the wire over on itself to make it thicker, but I don't quite have enough wire out of this pigtail they send you. Well, I do, but that's literally all I've got room for. If I tried to double it over, I wouldn't be able to reach where I wanted to go. Okay, it took a little bit of trial and error, but I got it. I did end up having to strip it back double length and then fold the wire over to make it thicker. And then I was able to do a little finagling and close the crimp on here, like fold it, double it over underneath itself, and then staked it part way with my crimp tool, and then staked it the rest of the way with a hammer. And it actually didn't turn out that bad. So go ahead and do the heat shrink, do the other one. I should still have enough room. It's only going to be the one on the left side of the cab because there's unfortunately not a left and a right of these lights. So the wire comes out on both sides, or on the same side on both of them. So this one's got a little bit further to go to get inside the cab, but I should still be good. So I'll do this one. We'll go get them mounted and probably wait till dark and see what they look like, because I'm kind of excited. Alright, I got both lights mounted. It was interesting, when I formulated this plan to run them both inside the cab, I kind of forgot how small the hole was to run the wire through. But luckily, I was able to take those 3/8 ring terminals and tackle them and fish them through the holes and then flatten them back out once I got them inside the cab. But anyway, contact, lights, I see glowing. Oh wow. I'm gonna be curious to wait till dark and come out here and see. Surely it has to make a difference. They gotta be brighter than what was on there. I know looking at them, ouch. So I guess I'm going to clean my stuff up, because that's all I'm going to do for the day. And we will come back out here in about 45 minutes when it's dark outside, because I'm kind of curious to see how this turns out. Because I would prefer to not have to add a light bar across the top, just because at least with these lights on there, you still looks, if you didn't know that they were LEDs, they'd still look kind of like it belonged that way. If you put the light bar on there, then all of a sudden it doesn't. That's very obviously not supposed to be there. So, but if you gotta add one, you gotta add one, because especially cutting beans in the dark, you need headlights. All right, it's not dark, but it's dark enough. Holy, that's a little different. It looks like I need to tweak. I need to tweak that one. It needs to go that way some and that way some to get him in. Okay, the camera's doing its 20% fit again. So lights work, everything's good. That's it for this one. We'll catch you guys on the next one.